Captain Park stood on the bridge of the Serenity Dawn, watching the massive space station grow larger on the Galactic Council Nexus was the largest structure he had ever seen. It was bigger than Earth's moon, with thousands of ships docked along its gleaming metal surface. Lights blinked across its hull like stars, and felt a mix of pride and nervousness. This was humanity's chance to prove they belonged among the great civilizations of the galaxy. "Captain, we're being hailed by Station Control," said Lieutenant One from the communications station. She was young, barely 25, but she was one of the best pilots in the human fleet. "Put them through," said. A voice crackled over the speakers, speaking in the common galactic language that humans had learned over the past 20 years. "Human vessel Serenity Dawn, you are cleared for docking Bay 73. Welcome to the Nexus." "Acknowledged," replied. He turned to One. "Take us in nice and steady." Behind him, Ambassador HFY entered the bridge. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been a diplomat for 30 years, but this was her biggest assignment yet. Today, she would ask the Galactic Council to grant humanity full membership. So far, humans were only associate members, which meant they could trade and talk but had no real voice in galactic decisions. "How are you feeling, Ambassador?" asked. HFY smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Nervous. They have been blocking our application for 5 years now. They think we're too primitive, too weak to deserve a seat at the table." "We'll show them," said with more confidence than he felt. The docking procedure took an hour. Then HFY and her team of diplomats took a shuttle to the council chambers, deep inside the station, stayed on the Serenity Dawn, monitoring the situation from the ship. The council chamber was enormous. Representatives from 200 different species sat in a circular arrangement, each in their own pod that floated above the floor. At the center was the speaker's platform, where Council Speaker Ara presided over the meetings. Ara was a species that looked like tall, thin creatures with purple skin and 4 arms. HFY stood on the petitioner's platform, a small circle of light at the bottom of the chamber. She felt very small, very alone. "Ambassador HFY of Earth," Ara's voice echoed through the chamber. "You have requested this session to petition for full council membership. Please present your case." HFY took a deep breath. She had practiced this speech 100 times. "Honored council members, humanity has been part of the galactic community for 20 years. In that time, we have proven ourselves to be peaceful, honest, and willing to learn. We have contributed to galactic science, shared our culture, and maintained positive relations with over 50 species. We ask that you grant us full membership so that we may serve the greater good of all civilizations." There was silence for a moment. Then a booming voice filled the chamber. "And what makes you think you deserve such an honor?" The voice came from High Commander as of the Empire. They were a warrior race, large and muscular with gray skin and ridges along their heads. They controlled a quarter of the galaxy and had the largest military force in known space. HFY kept her voice calm. "We believe our contributions speak for themselves, High Commander." "Contributions," as laughed a harsh sound. "You have contributed nothing but amusement. Your people arrived in space with primitive ships and weaker weapons. You accepted our restrictions without question, dismantling most of your military like obedient children. You are soft, you are weak, and you want to sit among warriors and leaders." Anger flashed through HFY, but she controlled it. "Strength is not only measured in weapons, High Commander." "Is that so?" As stood up in his pod. "Then let me demonstrate what real strength looks like." On the main, an image appeared. It showed a small moon orbiting a gas giant in a nearby uninhabited system. The moon was gray and barren, about the size of Earth's moon. "Watch carefully, human," as said. A warship appeared on the screen. It was massive, 10 times larger than the Serenity Dawn. The ship's weapon ports began to glow with bright blue energy. Then, a beam of light shot out from the ship and struck the moon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the moon began to crack. Huge fissures appeared across its surface, glowing with internal heat. The moon shattered, breaking into millions of pieces that drifted away into space. Where a moon had been, there was now only debris. The council chamber was silent. Some species looked impressed, others looked uncomfortable. HFY stood very still, her hands clenched at her sides. "That is power," as said. "That is what it takes to survive in this galaxy. Can your human ships do that? Can your people defend themselves against such force?" HFY opened her mouth to respond, but as wasn't finished. "I propose a new resolution," he said. "Instead of granting humanity full membership, I suggest they become a tributary state of the Empire. We will protect them, guide them, and in return they will serve us. It is the natural order. The strong protect the weak." Murmurs spread through the council chamber. Some species nodded in agreement, others looked uncertain. "That is not acceptable," HFY said, her voice firm despite her racing heart. "Then you choose war," as said simply. "My fleet is already moving toward your colonies. Submit or be conquered. You have 1 week to decide." The speaker tried to intervene. "High Commander, this is not proper procedure." But as had already shut off his communication link, his pod went dark. HFY stood on the platform, feeling the weight of 200 species watching her. Some looked sympathetic, many looked away. None spoke up to defend humanity. Back on the Serenity Dawn, received an emergency communication from Earth. Admiral's face appeared on the screen, looking grim. "Captain, we're tracking fleet movements. They're heading toward New Sol and Terra Nova. This is not a drill. They're actually going to attack." One gasped from her station. "Sir, that's 3 of our biggest colonies. Over 2 million people live there." Felt cold. "What are our orders, Admiral?" "Get the ambassador and get home. The defense fleet is being mobilized. We'll meet them with everything we have." "Everything?" one asked without thinking. "You mean?" "I mean conventional forces, Lieutenant," said sharply. "We are still bound by the treaty. We fight with what we're allowed to use." One bit her lip. She had almost said too much, almost mentioned the things that were supposed to stay secret, the weapons locked away in hidden facilities, the ships that were officially decommissioned but not destroyed, the arsenal that humanity promised the Council they would never use. Caught her eye and shook his head slightly. "Not now, not yet." "Understood," Admiral said. "We're on our way." As the Serenity Dawn undocked from the Nexus, HFY returned to the ship. She looked tired and angry. "They're going to do it," she said quietly. "They are actually going to attack our colonies." "I know," said. "Earth knows we're preparing." HFY looked out at the stars. "Preparing with what? They saw our fleet specs when we joined the Council. They know we can't match their firepower, not with what we're allowed to use." Didn't answer, because HFY was right. With conventional weapons, with the restrictions in place, humanity couldn't win this fight. But there was so much they didn't know. So much the entire galaxy didn't know about what humans were really capable of. And if they pushed too hard, they were going to find out. The Serenity Dawn jumped to faster-than-light speed, racing toward Earth. Behind them, the fleet moved toward human space like a hammer falling toward an anvil. War was coming. General stood in the command center on New, watching the tactical display with growing dread. The screen showed dozens of red dots approaching the colony world. Warships, more than he had expected, more than his fleet could possibly handle. "How long until they arrive?" he asked. 18 minutes, sir," said Commander Bora from the sensor station. Nodded slowly. He was a veteran soldier, 53 years old, with gray in his hair and scars from the last time humans had fought a real war. That had been 40 years ago, during the resource wars on Earth. Since then, humanity had been peaceful. They joined the Galactic Council. They promised to be good neighbors. They put away their most terrible weapons. And now they were coming to destroy everything he was sworn to protect. "Status of the defense fleet?" he asked. All 12 ships are in position, sir, Bora replied. They and Ulsan are positioned at high orbit. The other 9 are spread around the colony's defensive perimeter. 12 ships, almost laughed. They were bringing 47 warships to this one colony alone, and the reports said they were attacking 2 other colonies at the same time with similar numbers. Sir, we could evacuate, suggested Captain Min, his second-in-command. Get the civilians off-world before the attack begins. Where would they go? Asked. We'll just hunt them down. No, we make our stand here. We make them pay for every inch of ground. The general turned to the communications officer. Send a message to all ships. Engage the enemy at maximum range. Use first, then plasma torpedoes. Save the missiles for when they get close. Yes, sir. Watch the timer count down. 15 minutes, 12, 10. He thought about his daughter who lived in the capital city below. She was a teacher with 2 young children of her own. He had told her to go to the bunkers. He hoped she had listened. Enemy ships dropping out of faster than light in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The red dots on the screen suddenly became real shapes. Warships materialized in orbit around Nu, their hulls dark gray and covered with weapon ports. They were beautiful in a terrible way, built for one purpose only: destruction. Open fire, ordered. The human ships launched their first attack, fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds, crossing the distance between the fleets in seconds. The slugs slammed into shields, creating bright flashes of light. Some shields held. Some failed, and the slugs punched holes in the alien hulls. But it wasn't enough. For every ship that took damage, 10 more returned fire. Incoming, Bora shouted. The command center shook as energy beams struck the planetary shields. The shields were the colony's last defense, a dome of energy that covered the main city. They could take a lot of punishment, but not forever. In orbit, Captain Dongmin commanded the cruiser. His ship was firing everything it had, but the just kept coming. He watched as one of his plasma torpedoes hit a destroyer, burning through its armor and causing an explosion. The destroyer spun out of control, leaking atmosphere. Good hit, his weapons officer shouted. But then 3 more ships moved into position and opened fire on the cruiser's shields flickered and failed. Energy beams cut into the hull, tearing through metal like paper. We're losing pressure on decks 4 through 7, someone yelled. Reroute power to engines, Dongmin ordered. Get us out of here. But it was too late. Another barrage struck and this time the ship's reactor went critical. Dongmin had just enough time to hit the evacuation alarm before everything went white. Down in the command center, watched the explode. Hundreds of people died in that flash of light. Good people, his people. The is reporting heavy damage, Bora said, her voice shaking. The Ulsan is pulling back, sir, we're losing. His jaw tightened. Tell all ships to fall back to defensive position Beta. We'll make them fight for every meter. The battle raged for 3 hours. The human ships fought bravely, using every trick they knew. They used the colony's moons for cover. They coordinated their attacks, focusing fire on single enemy ships. They launched spread patterns of missiles that forced to waste ammunition on interception. But skill and courage couldn't overcome simple numbers and superior firepower. One by one, the human ships were destroyed or disabled. The lost its engines and drifted helplessly. The took a direct hit to its bridge, killing everyone inside. The one made a brave suicide run at a battleship, ramming it at full speed and destroying them both. By the 4th hour, only 3 human ships remained functional, and the had barely lost a quarter of their fleet. Sir, the planetary shields are at 30%, Bora reported. They won't last much longer. Looked at the tactical display. It was over. They had lost. He knew it. Everyone in the command center knew it. Send the evacuation order, he said quietly. Get as many people to the bunkers as possible, and tell the remaining ships to. General, Bora interrupted. I'm picking up something strange. The flagship is broadcasting on an open channel. Put it on speakers. A voice filled the command center, speaking in accented but clear human language. Human defenders of Nu, this is Commander of the Imperial Fleet. Your resistance has been noted and will be recorded in our battle archives. You have fought with honor. Grab the microphone. If you think we fought with honor, then leave. You've made your point. I cannot do that, A replied. But I offer you terms. Surrender now. Order your ships to stand down. In return, your people will be treated fairly under rule. Continue to resist, and we will be forced to destroy your city from orbit. The general looked around the command center. His officers stared back at him, waiting. He thought about his daughter again. The 2 million people living in the city below. If we surrender, said slowly, what happens to us? You will become subjects of the Empire, I said. You will work, you will serve, but you will live. That is more mercy than most species receive. Slavery thought, that's what he's offering, a life of slavery for humanity. Give me 1 hour to consider, said. You have 30 minutes, A replied, and the channel closed. Captain Min stepped close to the general. Sir, what are we going to do? Didn't answer right away. He was thinking about something one had almost said on the Serenity Dawn, something about humanity's restricted arsenal, the weapons they weren't supposed to use, the weapons that were locked away in secret facilities scattered across human space. Bora, he said quietly, send an encrypted message to Earth. Tell them we need authorization for Protocol Omega. Bora's eyes went wide. Sir, are you sure? Just send it. The message went out on a special channel that only a few people in the military knew existed. It traveled faster than light, reaching Earth in minutes. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship, Commander studied the data from the battle. He was not like High Commander as was a politician, a bully who enjoyed crushing weaker species. Was a soldier, a tactician who studied his enemies carefully. And something about the humans bothered him. He pulled up the weapon analysis. The human ships had used plasma weapons and conventional missiles. All of these were standard technology in the galaxy, nothing impressive. But their ships themselves were strange. The power signatures didn't match the weapons they were using. The human ships had much larger reactors than necessary for their armament. It was like they were designed to power weapons they didn't have, or weapons they chose not to use. I brought up the records from when humanity first joined the Galactic Council. He read the reports about Earth's history, the wars they had fought against themselves, the weapons they had developed, nuclear bombs, biological agents, things that made even warriors uncomfortable. The humans had agreed to destroy 99% of those weapons as a condition of joining the Council. I had always assumed that was because they were afraid, because they wanted to appear peaceful. But what if it wasn't fear? What if it was something else? He was about to investigate further when an alarm sounded. His communications officer looked up in surprise. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's being broadcast to all ships in human space. Put it on screen. A woman appeared on the. She wore a formal suit and had iron-gray hair. The caption identified her as President Min of United Earth. Commander, she said, her voice cold and hard. You have attacked 3 of our colonies without provocation. You have killed over 40,000 of our citizens. This is an act of war. Your people were given a choice, I replied. Submit or be conquered. We choose neither, Min said. We choose to defend ourselves with everything we have. Something in her tone made her uneasy. You are already defending yourselves, President, and you are losing. Min smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No, Commander, we haven't been defending ourselves. We've been following the rules. The restrictions the Galactic Council placed on us 20 years ago, but those restrictions have a clause, Article 17, the right to self-defense. Felt a cold knot form in his stomach. What are you saying? I'm saying the gloves are off, Min replied. You wanted to see what humans are really capable of. You're about to find out. The transmission ended. Anu General received his answer from Earth. Just 2 words, authorization granted. He took a deep breath and turned to his staff. Ladies, contact the reserve fleet. Tell them to activate all of them. The reserve fleet, Min asked. But those ships are over 70 years old. They're museum pieces. Smiled for the first time in hours. That's what we told the council. Get them online, and someone wake up the weapons division. Tell them to open the vaults. In orbit, they waited for the human surrender. They had no idea what was coming. Dr. Nu walked through the corridors of the Geneva Archives facility with 2 armed guards following her. She had been pulled out of bed 3 hours ago by military police and flown here on a priority transport. No explanation, just orders from the president herself. The facility was buried 3 kilometers underground, beneath the Swiss mountains. Nu had worked here for 15 years as head of the Historical Weapons Division, but she had never been called in like this before, never with such urgency. The guards led her to a secure conference room. Inside, a dozen people sat around a long table. She recognized President Min immediately, along with Defense Minister One and Admiral. The others were high-ranking military officers and government officials. Dr. Min said, standing, "Thank you for coming so quickly. Please sit." Nu sat down, her heart pounding. "Madame President, what's happening? They wouldn't tell me anything." "We're at war," one said bluntly. "They are attacking our colonies. We need to activate Protocol Omega, and we need you to brief the council on exactly what that means." Nu felt the blood drain from her face. Protocol Omega. She had helped write parts of it, had the weapons it would unleash, but she never thought it would actually be used. "You want to open the vaults," she said quietly. "We want to do more than that," Admiral said. "We want you to explain to these people what humanity has been hiding for the past 20 years. Most of them don't know the full story." Nu looked around the table. Some of the officials looked confused, others looked nervous. She understood why. What she was about to tell them would change everything. She stood up and walked to the presentation screen. With a few taps on her tablet, images began to appear. "When humanity developed faster-than-light travel," she began, "we thought we were alone in the universe. We explored for 10 years before we met the first alien species. They were peaceful, friendly. They introduced us to the Galactic Council." An image of the Council Nexus appeared on the screen. "We were excited," Nu continued. "Finally, we weren't alone. We could join a community of civilized species, trade knowledge, share cultures, but the Council had conditions for membership." She pulled up a document. "They wanted to see our history, our technology, our weapons, so we gave them access to everything, our databases, our libraries, our military records, and that's when they became horrified." A new image appeared. It was a mushroom cloud from an old nuclear test. "Humanity's path to space was different from other species," Nu said. "Most aliens developed weapons gradually over thousands of years. They invented the spear, then the bow, then gunpowder, and so on. Their weapons evolved slowly alongside their technology." She changed the image to show a timeline. But humans compressed all of that evolution into just 300 years. From the first airplane to the atomic bomb took only 42 years. And we didn't just build one atomic bomb. We built thousands. We built bombs so powerful they could destroy entire cities in seconds. The room was silent. Everyone knew this history, but hearing it laid out like this made it feel different, darker. "Then we built worse things," Nu continued. "Biological weapons that could kill millions through disease, chemical weapons that could poison the air itself, hydrogen bombs that made the first atomic bombs look like firecrackers, and we were the only species in galactic history to actually use these weapons. Not in space. Not against aliens. Against ourselves. She pulled up images of destroyed cities. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the scars from the resource wars. We fought 3 world wars on Earth, she said. Hundreds of millions died. We almost destroyed our own planet. And the worst part, we did it all before we even reached space. President Min spoke up. Doctor, tell them about the Council's reaction. None nodded. When the Council saw our history, they were terrified. They had never encountered a species so young that had developed such destructive weapons. Most species don't invent nuclear weapons until they've had for centuries. Many never invent them at all. They find other ways to solve conflicts. She pulled up another document. The Council gave us a choice. We could join them, but only if we agreed to dismantle our weapons of mass destruction. All of them. They wanted 99% of our arsenal destroyed and monitored by Council inspectors. And we agreed, one said, his voice bitter. We destroyed almost everything. Almost, Na emphasized. We destroyed the weapons themselves, the bombs, the missiles, the biological agents. We shut down the factories. We decommissioned the military ships that were designed to carry those weapons. But she paused for effect. We never destroyed the knowledge. We never deleted the blueprints. We never dismantled the production facilities. We just locked them away. Here, in places like this. Admiral stood up. Show them Vault 7. Nu's fingers trembled slightly as she entered her access codes. A camera feed appeared on the screen, showing a massive underground chamber. It was the size of an aircraft hangar, and it was filled with rows upon rows of cylindrical containers. This is one of 12 weapons vaults scattered across Earth, Na explained. Vault 7 contains 300 Genesis torpedoes. Each one is capable of igniting a gas giant and turning it into a temporary star. The energy release is enough to sterilize every planet in the system. Gasps filled the room. One official looked like he might be sick. Show them Vault 3, said. Another camera feed. This vault showed hundreds of sleek, dark missiles. Relativistic kinetic kill vehicles, Na said. They accelerate to 99% the speed of light before impact. When they hit, they release more energy than a nuclear bomb, and they're almost impossible to intercept because they're moving so fast. Vault 12 ordered. This vault looked different. It contained vials and containers with biohazard symbols. Biological agents, Na said softly. Engineered viruses and bacteria. Some are designed to target specific DNA sequences. We could, theoretically, create a plague that only affects, or any other species. These weapons are illegal under every galactic treaty in existence. And Vault 1 said, show them our pride and joy. The camera switched to show something different. Not weapons, but ships. Dozens of them, sitting in a massive underground bay that had been carved out of the Earth's crust. The first true fleet, Na said. These are humanity's actual warships. The ones we told the Council were decommissioned and turned into museums. They're not. They've been kept in perfect working order, maintained by a skeleton crew, waiting in hidden bays like this one all over human space. She zoomed in on one ship. It was sleek and dark, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. It looked nothing like the cheerful, bright ships that humanity showed to the galaxy. The Dreadnought Soul, she said, 4 kilometers long, equipped with quantum displacement cannons, dispensers, and enough firepower to level a continent. Along with her 47 sister ships, she forms the core of our real military. Defense Minister 1 slammed his hand on the table. This is what we gave up for peace. This is what we locked away because we wanted to be part of the galactic community. And now they think we're weak. They think they can conquer us because we only showed them our police force. Our civilian defense fleet, Admiral corrected. Everything we've been using to defend our colonies is equipment designed for law enforcement and piracy prevention. It's like fighting a war with pistols while you have nuclear missiles in your basement. President Min stood up. Doctor, I need you to prepare a full inventory. I want to know exactly what we have and how quickly we can deploy it. Admiral, start activating the first true fleet. Minister 1, draft orders for the weapons facilities to begin production. Production, one official asked nervously. Madame President, are we really going to build more of these weapons? Min turned to him, her expression hard. Councilman Park, they have killed 40,000 of our people. They're threatening to enslave 3 of our colonies. And they did this because they thought we were too weak to fight back. So yes, we're going to show them what we're capable of. And then we're going to make sure no one ever underestimates humanity again. She looked around the room. But understand this. We're not going to become monsters. We're not going to use these weapons indiscriminately. We're going to use them surgically, precisely, to defend our people and force them to surrender. And when this war is over, we're going back to peace. Because that's who we are. We're the species that learned from our mistakes. Na watched the president speak and felt a chill run down her spine. She had spent 15 years studying humanity's darkest creations. She knew what these weapons could do, and she was terrified that once they were unleashed, it would be impossible to put them back in the box. But she also thought about the people dying on Nu, the children huddled in bunkers, afraid and alone, the soldiers fighting with inadequate weapons against an overwhelming enemy. How long do we have? She asked quietly. Admiral checked his tablet. General on Nu is holding out, but barely. The other colonies are in similar situations. The commanders have given us ultimatums. Surrender or be destroyed. We have maybe 72 hours before they start bombarding civilian centers. Then we don't have time to waste, Na said. She pulled up her full inventory lists. The first true fleet can be ready in 24 hours. The weapons in the vaults are already functional. We just need authorization codes to unlock them and military personnel trained to use them. The training never stopped, said with a slight smile. We've been running simulations for 20 years. Every officer in the real military knows how to use this equipment. We just told the council they were training exercises for historical education. Min nodded. Then we move forward. Doctor, you have your orders. Admiral, begin the activation sequence. And someone get me a direct line to Commander A. I want to give him one last chance to withdraw before we unleash hell. As the meeting broke up, Na remained behind, staring at the images of the vaults on the screen. Rows and rows of weapons that could crack planets and burn stars. Tools of destruction that humanity had promised never to use again. But promises made in peace meant nothing when your children were dying. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to no one in particular. Forgive us for what we're about to do. Then she got to work. Fleet Admiral 1 had not worn his real uniform in 18 years. It had been stored in a sealed container in his closet, waiting for a day he hoped would never come. The uniform was black instead of the blue that civilian fleet officers wore. It had more insignia, more medals, more symbols of rank. It was the uniform of humanity's true military. He put it on now and looked at himself in the mirror. He looked older than he remembered. Gray hair, lines around his eyes, but his hands were steady as he fastened the last button. His communicator buzzed. Admiral, the Soul is ready for your command. I'll be there in 5 minutes, one replied. He took a shuttle from the surface to orbit, where the hidden fleet bay had been opened for the first time in 2 decades. The sight took his breath away. Dozens of warships floated in perfect formation, their dark hulls gleaming in the light of Earth's sun. These were not the bright, friendly vessels that humanity showed to the galaxy. These were weapons, pure and simple. The dreadnought Soul dominated the center of the formation. 4 kilometers of armored death, bristling with weapons that the Galactic Council didn't know existed. One's shuttle docked with the ship, and he walked onto a bridge that hummed with power. Admiral on deck, someone called. The bridge crew saluted. They were all veterans, all trained for this moment. Some were old like him, pulled out of retirement. Others were younger, part of the secret military that had never stopped existing despite what the council believed. "Status report," one ordered, settling into the captain's chair. "All systems are green, sir," said Commander, his first officer. "Quantum displacement cannons are charged, bays are loaded, shields are at maximum. The fleet is ready to jump on your command." One pulled up the tactical display. It showed the 3 colonies under attack: New Sol, and Terra Nova. The fleets surrounding them like wolves circling wounded prey. "Open a channel to all ships," he said. The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." One took a deep breath. "This is Fleet Admiral One to all vessels of the First True Fleet. For 20 years we have waited in the shadows. We have maintained our ships and trained our crews for a war we prayed would never come. But that war is here. They have attacked our colonies. They have killed our people. They think we are weak because we chose peace." He paused, letting his words sink in. "They are about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. We are going to show them what humanity is truly capable of, but remember this. We are not murderers. We are not conquerors. We are defenders. We will use overwhelming force to end this war quickly and decisively, and when it is over we will return to peace, because that is who we are." The bridge crew sat in their chairs. Pride and determination showed on their faces. "All ships," one ordered. "Jump coordinates locked to new. Engage faster-than-light drives in 10 seconds. 9, 8. As the countdown reached 0, the entire fleet vanished in flashes of light, traveling faster than physics should allow, racing toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. On New, General watched his planetary shields fail. The dome of energy that had protected the colony flickered and died, and he knew the bombardment would begin any second. But instead of bombardment, something else happened. The space above the planet suddenly filled with light as dozens of ships appeared from nowhere. But these weren't the damaged civilian defense vessels. These were something else entirely. Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the new arrivals in shock. "Where did those ships come from? I want identification now." His sensors officer worked frantically at his console. "Sir, they're human ships, but they don't match any profiles in our database. They're massive, power signatures off the scale. I'm reading weapons systems I've never seen before." "How many?" demanded. 48 capital ships, sir, plus over 200 smaller vessels. Sir, this fleet is bigger than ours." A felt ice in his stomach. "That's impossible. The humans don't have this many ships. We have their fleet manifests. We know what they have." "Apparently we don't," his tactical officer said quietly. A communication request came through. I accepted it, and a human appeared on his screen, an older man in a black uniform. "Commander," the human said, "I am Fleet Admiral One of the United Earth Navy. You have one chance to withdraw your forces peacefully. Leave our colony. Leave our space. Do it now and you will live." A's pride flared. "You dare threaten me? Even with your new ships, you are still outnumbered. My fleet has orders to conquer this world, and I will carry out those orders." "Then you have chosen death," one said simply, and the channel closed. A turn to his weapons officer. "All ships, open fire on the human fleet. Show them what power looks like." The fleet unleashed a massive barrage. Energy beams and missiles filled space, all targeting the human vessels. And then something impossible happened. The human ships simply vanished. "Where did they go?" I shouted. "They didn't go anywhere, sir," his sensors officer said in a shaking voice. "They phased. They shifted into a different dimension. Our weapons passed right through them." The human ships reappeared a second later, now positioned throughout the formation. And then they fired. Major Mi Young commanded the destroyer II from her position in the fleet. She had trained for this moment for 12 years, running simulations again and again. But simulations were nothing compared to the real thing. "Target the enemy cruiser at Mark 37, she ordered. "Quantum displacement cannon, fire." Her weapons officer pressed the trigger. A beam of twisted space lanced out from the II and struck the cruiser. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the cruiser began to fold. Space itself bent around the ship, and it was pulled into a dimensional pocket and disappeared from existence. "Target destroyed," the weapons officer reported, sounding amazed. "Next target," Mi-young said calmly, though her heart was racing. "The battleship at Mark 52." Across the battlefield, human ships were demonstrating technologies they had never encountered. Were released from the dreadnought II, clouds of microscopic machines that swarmed over vessels and began disassembling them at the molecular level. Crews watched in horror as their ships simply fell apart around them, dissolving into clouds of atoms. Relativistic missiles streaked across space at 99% light speed. When they hit, they struck with the force of nuclear weapons. Shields didn't just fail, they exploded. Entire ships were vaporized in single hits. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 14 minutes. A watched his fleet die around him. His flagship shuddered as weapons he didn't understand tore through his escorts. Ships that had served the Empire for centuries were destroyed in seconds. "All ships retreat," he ordered. "Emergency jump scatter pattern." But it was too late. A human ship appeared directly in front of his flagship. It was one of the dreadnoughts, massive and dark, its weapons glowing with deadly light. One's face appeared on A's screen again. "Your fleet is destroyed, Commander. Your flagship is the only ship left intact, and that's only because I'm allowing it. You have a choice. Surrender now or join your ships in oblivion." A looked around his bridge. Half his crew was dead. Systems were failing, his weapons were depleted. He had lost, completely and utterly lost. I surrender," he said, the words bitter in his mouth. "Wise choice," one said. "Do not attempt to destroy your ship. Do not attempt to harm your crew. Human Marines will board shortly. You will be treated according to the rules of war, unlike how you would have treated our people." The transmission ended, and slumped in his chair. In less than 15 minutes, the entire invasion force at Nu had been annihilated. One flagship remained as a prisoner. 46 other ships were debris. On the other two colonies, the story was the same. Human fleets appeared from nowhere, unleashed weapons that seemed like magic, and destroyed the forces with ruthless efficiency. The invaders who had come expecting easy conquest found themselves facing an enemy that fought with precision, power, and terrifying skill. In the home system, High Commander as received the reports. His face went pale as he read the casualty figures. 3 entire invasion fleets, destroyed, in less than an hour. "How," he whispered, "how is this possible?" His intelligence officer pulled up files. "Sir, we found references in human historical records. They had these weapons all along. They agreed to store them away when they joined the Council, but they never destroyed them, and we forced them to use them." As felt fear for the first time in his long military career. "Send a message to all fleets in human space. Withdraw immediately. And get me a channel to the Galactic Council. We need to sue for peace before the humans decide to counterattack into our territory." "Sir, what do we tell the Council?" As looked at the images of destroyed ships, he thought about the power humanity had just demonstrated. Power that the galaxy had never seen before. Power that humanity had chosen not to use for 20 years. "Tell them the truth," he said quietly. "Tell them we attacked the humans. Tell them the humans weren't using their real military. And tell them we were wrong. Terribly, catastrophically wrong." Back in Earth orbit, Fleet Admiral 1 received confirmation that all 3 colonies were secured. The fleets were destroyed or surrendered. Human casualties from the counterattack, 0. He allowed himself a small smile. All ships maintain defensive positions around the colonies. Do not pursue the retreating forces. We've made our point." "Sir," Commander said, "we could end this. We could jump to space and force a complete surrender." "No," one said firmly. "We're not conquerors, we're defenders. We've shown them what we can do. Now we give them a chance to make peace, because that's what separates us from them. We know when to stop." He looked out at the fleet, at the terrible weapons of war floating in the darkness of space. "And after this is over, we put these ships back in storage, where they belong." The Galactic Council Nexus looked the same as it had 3 weeks ago when Ambassador HFY had stood before them asking for membership. The same floating pods, the same circular chamber, the same hundreds of alien species watching from above. But everything felt different now. HFY stood on the petitioner's platform again, but she wasn't alone this time. Captain stood beside her in his dress uniform. He had been promoted to Fleet Admiral after the battle, though he had turned down a position commanding the real warships. He preferred the civilian fleet, he said. Someone needed to remember what peace looked like. The chamber was completely silent as Council Speaker Ara called the session to order. "Ambassador HFY of Earth," Ara said, her 4 arms gesturing formally, "you have requested this emergency session. The Council is listening." The pause before that last word spoke volumes. The Council wasn't just listening. They were afraid. Good, HFY thought they should be. "Honored Council members," she began, her voice clear and strong. 3 weeks ago, I stood here and asked for full membership in this council. I was refused. The Empire called us weak and primitive. They demanded we become their subjects, and when we refused, they attacked our colonies. She pulled up images on the main, destroyed buildings on new, bodies being pulled from rubble, children crying in hospital beds. 40,000 of my people died in those attacks, HFY continued. They came to conquer us because they believed we couldn't defend ourselves. They believed this because we had shown you only our civilian defense forces, the ships and weapons we use for law enforcement and piracy prevention. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species looked confused, others looked nervous. The pod was notably empty. High Commander as had not been invited to this session. "But we had other forces," HFY said. "Forces that we put away when we joined this council. Forces that we promised not to use unless we had no other choice. They gave us no choice." She changed the images to show the Battle of Nu, the fleet being systematically destroyed, ships dissolving under attacks, vessels phasing out of existence, the entire invasion force reduced to debris in minutes. The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. Species that had never shown fear before looked terrified. Representatives from weaker civilizations looked at the images with something like hope. "How?" demanded Council Member Al of the Hegemony. "How did you hide such power from us?" Stepped forward. "We didn't hide it. We told you about it during first contact. We gave you complete access to our historical records. You saw what weapons we had developed. Nuclear bombs, biological weapons, antimatter devices. You read about the wars we fought on Earth. The millions we killed. You knew what we were capable of. But you agreed to dismantle those weapons," another council member shouted. "We dismantled the weapons themselves," HFY said calmly, "as required by the treaty we signed. But the treaty said nothing about destroying our knowledge, nothing about eliminating our ability to rebuild those weapons if necessary, nothing about decommissioning our actual military vessels. We simply put them in storage." "You lied to us," Ara said, her voice tight with anger. "No," said firmly. "We told you exactly what we were doing. You assumed that a species capable of developing such weapons must be primitive, must be dangerous, must be controlled. You never asked if we had chosen to put those weapons away. You never considered that maybe we understood better than anyone the cost of such power." HFY pulled up more images. These showed Earth's history, The mushroom clouds over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the devastation of the resource wars, cities turned to ash, oceans poisoned, millions dead. Every species in this council developed weapons over thousands of years, she said. You had time to learn wisdom slowly, to understand the cost of violence gradually. Humanity didn't have that luxury. We developed weapons of mass destruction in mere centuries, and we used them, on ourselves. We nearly destroyed our own planet before we even reached space. She turned to face the council directly. Do you know what that teaches you? It teaches you what true power looks like. It teaches you what happens when strength is used without wisdom. We learned that lesson the hard way, written in the ashes of our own cities and the blood of our own children. The chamber was silent now. Every species was listening. When we reached space and met you, HFY continued, we made a choice. We chose to be better than what we had been. We chose peace. We put away our weapons of war and built ships of exploration. We joined your council and followed your rules, not because we were weak, not because we were afraid, but because we wanted to prove that strength and wisdom could coexist. And now, Ara asked quietly. Now we've proven it, said. We faced an invasion force that outnumbered our defensive fleets 3-1. We could have unleashed our full arsenal from the beginning. We could have destroyed the fleets, then counterattacked into their home systems. We could have conquered their empire in days. But you didn't, said a small voice from one of the pods. It belonged to representative of the collective, a species that they had subjugated 200 years ago. No, HFY said, we didn't. We used exactly enough force to stop the invasion and protect our people. We destroyed the attacking fleets but allowed the flagship to surrender. We didn't pursue into territory. We didn't demand conquest. We simply defended ourselves and then stopped. Because that's what we promised you we would do. That's what it means to have power and not abuse it. Ara was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. The Empire has requested mediation. They wish to negotiate a peace treaty. They are willing to pay reparations for the damage they caused. They are also withdrawing their objection to human membership in the council. How generous of them, HFY said. The question before this council, Ara continued, is whether we should lift the weapons restrictions placed on humanity. You have demonstrated that you possess technologies and capabilities far beyond what we allowed you to deploy. Technologies that make you, potentially, the most powerful military force in known galactic space. She paused. That frightens us, Ambassador. I will not lie. The thought of humanity with unrestricted access to weapons of such power frightens every species in this chamber. Good, said bluntly. Several council members gasped at his directness. You should be frightened. These weapons are frightening. They were designed to kill, to destroy, to obliterate. We're frightened of them too. That's why we locked them away in the first place. Then why unleash them now? Someone asked. Because our people were dying, HFY said simply. Because we had tried every diplomatic option. Because they gave us no choice. But now the war is over. The threat is ended. And we're going to put those weapons back where they came from. The chamber erupted again. What? You're not keeping them deployed. Why would you do that? President Min's voice came over the speakers. She was attending the session remotely from Earth. Because that's who we are. The Galactic Council asked us to restrict our weapons 20 years ago. We agreed then and we're agreeing now. We'll keep enough military force to defend ourselves. We'll maintain the first true fleet in case we're attacked again. But the most destructive weapons, the ones that can crack planets and burn stars, those go back into storage. Locked away until the day, we pray, never comes when we need them again. But you could dominate the galaxy, protested a council member from one of the smaller civilizations. With such power, you could reshape the council. You could demand anything you want. We don't want to dominate anyone, Min said. We want to be partners, equals. We want to explore and learn and grow alongside you. The weapons we have are tools of death. They don't build anything. They don't create anything. They only destroy. and we've seen enough destruction to last us 1,000 lifetimes. Ara looked at Haywan. So you're asking us to trust you, to believe that you'll voluntarily maintain restrictions even though we can no longer enforce them. Yes, Haywan said simply. Why should we? Haywan smiled. Because we just proved you can. We had the power to conquer the Empire. We chose not to. We had the power to demand anything from this council. We're choosing not to. We're choosing to return to peace because that's what we believe is right. Not because you're forcing us, because we're forcing ourselves. She pulled up one final image. It showed the first true fleet returning to their hidden bays in Earth's orbit. Massive warships, capable of destroying planets, going back into storage. This is what strength looks like, Haywan said. Not the ability to destroy, the ability to choose not to destroy. We learned that lesson the hard way. We paid for it with millions of lives and centuries of suffering, and we're not going to forget it just because we're the strongest ones in the room now. The council voted 3 hours later. The weapons restrictions on humanity were officially lifted. Earth was granted full council membership with all rights and privileges, and the Empire was censured, forced to pay massive reparations, and placed under council monitoring for 50 years. But the most important vote was the one humanity proposed themselves. A new treaty that would apply to all council members, not just humans. Limitations on weapons of mass destruction. Regulations on technologies that could threaten entire planets. Requirements for transparency and mutual inspection. The council approved it by a wide margin. Because if humanity, with all their terrible weapons and dark history, could choose peace, then perhaps the rest of the galaxy could too. 3 months later, on the rebuilt colony of New, General walked through the new memorial park with his daughter, and the park honored the 40,000 people who had died in the attack. Each name was carved into a black stone wall that stretched for hundreds of meters. "Grandfather," his grandson asked, looking up at him, "why did the aliens attack us?" Knelt down to look the boy in the eyes. Because they thought we were weak. They thought that because we chose peace, we couldn't defend ourselves. But we could, the girl said. We had big ships, big weapons. Yes, said, we did, and we used them to protect our home, but then we put them away again. Do you know why? The children shook their heads. Because having a weapon doesn't mean you have to use it, explained. Being strong doesn't mean you have to hurt people. The hardest thing in the world is having the power to destroy and choosing not to. That's what makes us human, not our weapons, our choices. Far above, in orbit, a single ship floated in the darkness. It was the dreadnought Soul, kept active as a reminder, not a threat, a promise, that humanity would defend itself if necessary, but that it would always choose peace first. In her office on Earth, Dr. Nuss sealed the final vault. The weapons were secure again. The knowledge was locked away. But this time, she didn't feel the same dread she had before. Because now the galaxy knew. They knew what humanity was capable of. They knew the cost of pushing humans too far. But more importantly, they knew that humanity could be trusted with power because humanity had learned what power really meant. She received a message from her granddaughter, who was studying xenobiology at the Council's Academy on the Nexus. Grandmother, they're asking me about the war in my classes. They want to know if the stories are true, if humans really have weapons that can destroy stars. Nut typed her reply carefully. Tell them yes, we do. Tell them we've had them for over 100 years. And tell them we've chosen not to use them for almost as long. Because that's the real story, not what we can destroy, what we choose to build instead. She looked out her window at the city beyond, children playing in parks, people going about their lives in peace, the sky above filled with stars and possibilities. Humanity had faced its test, it had shown its strength, and then, most importantly, it had shown its restraint. The galaxy would remember that. And maybe, just maybe, they would learn from it. The greatest strength, Nuh thought, isn't in the weapons we can wield. It's in the weapons we choose not to.